It's a landscape where you can start expressing these things and you can start stepping into this sort of vibration that you want to bring into other parts of your life. And it's a way to get going. It's a way to begin podcasting, that is. Hi, I'm Christina Barcy. Welcome to the Boss Goddess podcast. This is your invitation to step out of the hustle and into your purpose and passion. What's my secret? Podcasting. This is how I've up-leveled my life on multiple occasions when I was ready to bring my dreams to life. And it's how I help my clients realize their big dreams. This is where you become the boss goddess in your niche and gently bring your dreams to life. Did you know podcasting is a clarity companion? By just going through the process of creating your podcast, you will become more clear on your path forward. And what follows clarity? Confidence. If you're ready to take a step forward that follows your authenticity, meets you exactly where you are now in this moment, and will guide you forward in a creative and organic way, then I encourage you to explore what a podcast created by you could look like. You can get started with my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook, where you'll receive 5 days of gentle guidance and a resource to your inbox that will get you started in exploring this option as your next step to clarity, confidence, and maybe even the very foundation that will become your next brand or business. Just go to boss-goddess.co/activate or click the link in the show notes. As someone who has spent the last 8 years working in the podcast industry as an agency and as a freelance producer before that, I've had the opportunity to speak on industry stages, be in rooms where the industry is getting defined. I've also created spaces where this happens on several occasions. But one of my favorite opportunities is being a judge for podcast competitions. And part of that reason is because I get to really see what people are making and how they're getting inspired to create their shows. But I want to say that having such an insider experience with a medium that is more or less fairly new and still being defined has been such a special privilege that I'm so grateful for. But the thing that really does make me fall in love with it over and over again is to see why people decide to do it and what they are creating. So like I said, I judged a few podcast competitions this year, and that was one of these great opportunities to really see why people are choosing to create their shows and what it means to them to do it, how it's changing their lives, and what their goals are for impacting the lives of their listeners or their guests. There's a magazine called Women Who Podcast Magazine. It's created by Kathy Barron, who's now a friend. So shout out to Kathy and her amazing magazine. And she launched her first podcast awards this year, and the submissions to her podcast awards were so inspiring to me because it really reinforced what I truly believe is the reason podcasting is such a powerful, healing, and special medium. They really inspired me and reminded me of why I love this so much. So today I'm going to share a few of the podcasts whose stories really inspired me so you can see how this medium is so human, how it's rooted in creating space for one another and creating space for yourself as the host, right? I want to share how it guides people forward in creating new energy, a new way of thinking, a healing space, or change for others, just to name a few. So if you've been wondering if podcasting is right for you or if you have what it takes to create one, then I hope today's episode inspires you with some of these podcasts who are doing it and finding healing or community or even new careers from creating their podcast. And I know we've been talking a lot about business lately and how podcasting can be your first step towards creating one. But for so many podcast creators, me included, it starts with something more personal and then it gets to evolve. So I did some reflecting on myself, the clients who have helped launch podcasts, The mini podcast I learned about through being a judge a few times, and what motivated me to start the podcast that I've started, and what motivated these podcast submissions, these podcasts that I'm about to share with you, what motivated them to start their podcast. So I'm going to share with you these themes. There's 5 common reasons that I've noticed that kind of resonate for almost everyone for why people choose to begin their podcast and keep it going. So as I share these with you, I want to invite you to listen in for whether any of these reasons are sounding like you, if you relate to any of them, if you're feeling pulled in that direction too. And also, maybe it'll spark some openness to how it doesn't need to always start with a big vision. Now, you may have a big vision, but when we step back into the moment we're actually in, the reason for wanting to create that big vision might be something more like what's on this list. So both can exist, the big vision and the more sort of organic reason compelling you forward. And I want to share that the key to beginning that big vision is connecting to one step that will inspire you forward or simply be easy enough to start. So with that in mind, let's get started. So a powerful reason you may choose to begin a podcast is healing. One of the podcasts that I had the pleasure of discovering was started by 2 best friends who were both struggling with burnout, called The Art of Classiness. And the way they chose to step into a healing process was to do it together by starting a podcast together. This was so inspiring to hear because it speaks to the power of friendship, of not going it alone, and for making space for others to not feel alone on their journey at the same time by sharing their own journey in real time as it's unfolding. There's something really bold and brave and also just special about doing that. And then there's another podcast that did this in a slightly different way that has a solo podcast about grief called Grief and Light, a topic that can often feel very lonely to go through. And her podcast created space to share her own journey with grief and to also help someone else understand what they might be going through and to feel less alone. Okay, number 2, another reason that I found again and again as I was listening and learning people's stories is a passion topic, or a passion as a motivation to start. Something that the host finds really fun, or maybe has some expertise in, or they just want an outlet to express this passion somewhere and connect with an audience that shares this passion with them. One of the podcasts I discovered during judging that did this is called Sheila and a Gig, and the 2 hosts research and share about women in history and modern day women who are unique and under-acknowledged and tell their stories, but they do it in a really lighthearted and fun way. And you can just tell they're really enjoying their topic. And to me, that falls under passion. Another fun one I like that was a podcast that is passionate was about live theater and highlighting the many types of people who are passionate and invested in the magic of live performances. This one is called Bellatine to Broadway, and it was unique because the episode that I listened to also had kind of like a DEI equity spin to it, because she was highlighting someone with a disability as well. So she realized she had a platform where she could now highlight people that may normally get overlooked. So it's just a good example of how this passion about theater and about live performance can evolve into making more space and highlight even more sort of nuances and niches and people and things around the topic that you started with. Okay, so number 3, similar to the passion topic, is what I call the lived experience style podcast. So this can be anything that is true to you in your life. I do notice that sometimes, maybe even often, that it's often surrounding a topic that might be not talked about very much or overlooked. And the person who's the host, right, experiencing this lived experience wants to talk about it because it's not in the limelight very much, or we're overlooking this topic and not learning about this community or this thing, whatever it may be. So for example, a really inspiring podcast called Tick Fit, the podcast, is hosted by a woman who has a tic disorder and interviews others who can also speak to this topic. So she's talking about her own experience a lot. She has a really, first look lens on the topic because it's her life. But then she's doing it in a really sort of smart way because she's bringing on others who can speak to the topic, whether that's other people who have lived experiences, other people who might be experts in this space who help people with tic disorders, or both. The one I listened to was someone who was experiencing both. So that just sort of enriches the topic because it's just so exactly true to their experience, and we can really learn from a community in this way. And it's low-hanging fruit in so many ways for the host because it just is, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I learned so much by listening to her, and it made me feel, once again, really re-inspired. I know I keep saying that, but that's why I'm pointing these ones out. They were so inspiring to realize that the impact podcasting can have on a community that might get overlooked, for example, or is misunderstood, and how someone can create this ongoing conversation that innately highlights and creates space for people to be more understood, to sort of normalize a topic and build community and connection. That is a very, very powerful thing. All right, number 4. Something I want to point out. I also want to point out that all of these that I just mentioned kind of intersect. You may be noticing that already. Each of these topics also have an element of healing. They have an element of passion at the center of their why, and they have some kind of personal connection, like the lived experience example. And the other thing that might seem obvious that they all have in common as a motivating reason to start a podcast is a strong desire to use your voice. If you're noticing this urge too, and that's why you're listening to this episode, then I hope that these reasons and examples of podcasts are helping you see how your first step can be very personal and community oriented all at once. You don't have to have it all figured out to begin creating. You really just need a strong why that's resonating enough for you to then define a topic around it to focus on, just to get you started. And then it evolves from there as you get going. As you keep going, you'll make discoveries and your topics will evolve. But it really comes back to that desire. Okay, so the last one, number 5 that we're talking about today, is similar to the lived experience and the passion podcast, but it includes something that you're an expert in as well. So oftentimes the reason we become experts is because we have a lived experience and or a passion around the topic. So that's why we dive really deep and become experts on the topic. And that's how this kind of relates to the lived experience and passion podcast example, the expertise version. So, okay, for example, my podcast, the one you're listening to right now, is motivated by those 3 combinations: my expertise in podcasting, creativity coaching, and healing, and my lived experience in each of those categories, because those are all passions of mine as well. And there are things that I incorporate into my daily life. I pretty much have podcasting in my life daily for the last, 12, 13 years now, which is a long time. And the whole process initially was very healing for me. I've been incorporating my creativity coaching tools for just about the same amount of time. And again, very healing for me. And then I realized the power of healing through both of those things. And then, of course, Reiki energy healing, which is an actual healing modality, got baked into my whole experience as well. So it's all intertwined. It always is. And I decided to finally just put that to the forefront and start incorporating all 3 more consistently in this podcast and what I'm building over at boss-goddess.co. So that's where you'll find my expertise and my passion all wrapped up into one. And it's pretty common if we are particularly connected to, working from a place of heart or a place of soul, if that's where we're motivated from or want to be, right? Maybe we want more of our life to reflect that part of ourselves that feels really true and really connected. If you're listening to this podcast, that's probably you. So this is why I'm sharing this with you, because it's a landscape where you can start expressing these things without having to have every detail figured out. And you can start stepping into this sort of vibration that you want to bring into other parts of your life. And it's a way to get going. It's a way to begin by incorporating what you're passionate about, by incorporating what you feel motivated by that feels connected to soul and heart for you. And if you are one of the people who feels motivated by using your voice, or you're feeling, an urge to do that, then once again, it's a great way to start podcasting, that is. And I'll share with you that I've always felt very deeply connected to wanting to express myself with my voice. Every dream I've ever had this at the center. So it's just part of who I am. It's the way that I feel most compelled to create. It's going to be something with my message, my voice, whether it's physically my voice or my writings, what's coming from me, my voice. That's just how I create. And if you feel like that's you, then this is another way to step into that. And creating from your voice is a really powerful way to bring what you're dreaming about, or what your vision is, or what you're wanting more of into the world, into your experience, and in turn into others' experience. Okay, there are several more reasons I could share with you about how people start their shows and what motivates them and why you might be a good fit for podcasting, why it might be a good aligned tool for you. But I'll save some of those for another time so that this episode isn't ridiculously long. And don't worry, you can find all of the links to these inspiring podcasts by women in the show notes, including a link to check out Kathy Barron's Women Who Podcast magazine. And my hope for you is that these podcasters and their why have inspired you and helped you see how simple and organic it can be. And that maybe one of the reasons I listed today is resonating for you because it feels like what you've been wondering about or feeling the urge to create from. And that really all you need is your why to begin. So thank you for listening. I hope I gave you some things to think about. Till next time, I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Boss Goddess podcast. And if you're ready to get started in exploring podcasting as an option for your next step to clarity, confidence, and maybe even the very foundation that will become your next brand or business, then go to boss-goddess.co/activate to get 5 days of gentle guidance and resources from me that will tap into your magic and your wisdom with my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook. Just go to boss-goddess.co/activate or click the link in the show notes.